All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming to the lecture at the Siam Society. Now, before we start, I have a few housekeeping things to tell you. We are having very busy time, so I only tell you the events that we're hosting for the next 2 weeks, probably. On Saturday this week, we're having a lecture in Thai by Ajahn Wigin, who is a specialist in Thai history, especially Ayutthaya, and she's doing a talk on mapping the maps of Ayutthaya. That will start at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, but at 1 p.m. we have an exhibition of the maps, so do come. And then following that, we have a visit to Bumper Inn, Summer Palace, and also going on to the Kingdom of Ayutthaya. That will be the weekend of Saturday the 27th to Sunday the 28th of May. And this is led by Ajahn Surya Wood, formerly of the Fine Arts, no, not Fine Arts, sorry, Silapakon University, sorry. And then we have a trip to, there's another lecture on the 1st of June by two people, and it's in two parts. Following the footsteps of Wuthugan Frank through the graveyards and temples of Thailand. So this one will start a bit earlier at 6:30. Now I'm going to get on to my business, and that's music. We have a concert next Wednesday, and this is free for everybody. It's sponsored by the Indonesian Embassy of music and dance from Indonesia, mainly from Aceh, Java, and Bali. They're bringing all their instruments, the gamelan, the whole lot. And the children from the school will play the angalons for us, and their dancers. I think they said it's already fully booked. But the thing is, when people book now, I get really annoyed. I'm going to make a black book. They book and they don't turn up. And then we have to, stop people who really want to come. So if you haven't booked yet, you should try to get in the waiting list, because this is really something rather special. And then on the 7th of June, the Pro Musica with a 23-piece string orchestra will play a title called War Requiem, but it's actually music. It's not by Benjamin Britten, but they're just using the title. And it's two pieces one by not Shostakovich, and the other with Richard Strauss. And this is sort of commemorating, what we're going through right now, the war victims and the horrors of war. Okay, so we don't have usually such a big orchestra coming to play, and this is conducted by the Japanese guest conductor. So do come to that. And then finally, at the end of June, on the 21st, I'm hosting for the first time a jazz festival at the Siam Society. Okay, so do come to that. I need your support because we have to pay the band a lot of money. So I need you all to come to the jazz festival, and they're playing all our favorites. So it should be fun. Right, now getting to tonight. Gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker for this evening, our very own Dr. Peerapat Ouysook, now who joined the Siam Society in August last year as an officer of the Siamese Heritage Trust. And then recently, he was recruited into the Music and Special Events Committee because of his passion and his knowledge of music, in particular opera. And we are planning something very special for next year on the 120th anniversary of the Siam Society. But that's not what we're talking about tonight. Now, Peerapat did his undergraduate studies at Chulalongkorn University, Faculty of Arts, and then he went on to Cambridge to study Mesopotamian languages in the Department of Archaeology. His doctoral dissertation, completed in 2021, investigates the composition of the inscriptions of King Nebuchadnezzar II. That was in the 6th century BC. Upon returning to Thailand, Peerapat is made aware of long-time Thai tradition of translating ancient texts, yeah, like Sanskrit and Pali texts, as well as some other Asian countries, namely Chinese and Japanese. In recent years, there also appear translations of popular literary works in Greek. So we think about Iliad and the Odyssey, and also in Latin, that's the Discourses of Socrates by Plato. But as yet, there is no such work done on Mesopotamian languages. So Dr. Peerapat aims to take up the task in this pioneer field to investigate the challenges and philological methodology in translating Babylonian into Thai. Thank you. Please to help me to welcome.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Siam Society. It's such a great honor. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your interest. I was told that this was meant to be a bit of a soiree. So instead of throwing at you theories in translation or hardcore academic works, we're just going to look at texts. We're just going to look at examples, like excerpts from ancient Babylonian or more broadly ancient Akkadian texts, so that we all know the variety of content that we have and the features that they have that might influence the way we think about reproducing it in Thai, translating into Thai, or trying to convey the worldviews of the ancient Babylonians into Thai. So I'll start this evening with just showing to you some of the examples. I think you all know you quite know well. I think everyone here is aware of how Pali and Sanskrit are already quite part of the Thai culture, right, of the Buddhist culture, and we have a long tradition of translating these ancient languages from South Asia to Thai. We have tools, we have dictionaries, we have philological knowledge, we have philological tradition. But aside from Pali and Sanskrit, there is also a parallel tradition of translating ancient languages that is beyond the Hindu Kush, namely the ancient Greek and the Latin. They're not quite as yet, what's the most appropriate term for that? Popular? They are quite popular in a way, but they're not as part of the. We don't have enough tools. We don't have enough philological tools. But we'll look at those examples, and we'll look at some of the features of the Babylonian languages as well, some of the history of how Babylonian was deciphered, some of the history of how Babylonian became, or Akkadian became part of the ancient studies academia, and the fact that nowadays tools are available in modern languages such as English, French, and German. But as for a smaller language like Thai, we're not a small language, right? We are like 75 speakers. For 75 million speakers, actually quite a big community of speakers as well. Anyway, and then we'll look at some examples from different types of Babylonian literature that have done some. So in the past few years, I did some sketchy drafts, and what I wanted to do is I want to show you the Thai drafts that I have. I'll do some translation into English, and I'll ask all of you to guess what they are or what kind of text they are, just to test the fact that this might be some workable translation, whatever it is. So, I think this is frozen. Is it? No, it's not. Wait, sorry. Oh, okay. So when we talk about Babylonian or Akkadian, we're talking about, like Sanskrit or Pali, a dead language. What do we mean by a dead language? A dead language is a language that is no longer native or that is no longer used in everyday life. This means that, like ancient Greek or Latin in the Western world, even though there are people who know these languages, there is no native speakers, and there is no such a thing as colloquial speakers of the language. And this is a feature that is this is an aspect that's very important to keep in mind, because especially when we revive that language based on available archaeological artifacts and evidences, there is no one who could tell us, right, that this is how Babylonian is used. This is how in Koine Greek was used in Constantinople of 300 AD. And so the idea is, what we do as academics is first we read the text and we find contexts that help us understand how this text might have been understood and reproduced in the culture. And with the help of archaeological context, we make theories about how things should mean, how a text might have existed in a context and enjoyed by certain people. As I said just now, so for the Thai language, there is a very sophisticated, let's just say, very complete, in a way, an ecosystem of translating ancient languages in South Asia. For example, Pali. This is Pali is part of the Thai culture, right? We have this Puthasana Supasit, the Buddhist citations from Buddhist texts that if you watch Channel 7, I think they're still doing it now, like just right before the primetime drama, there'll be this one reporter who read out this Pali script and then translate what it means. It's part of our life. There's also this dictionary, not just this dictionary, but many dictionaries that help the Thai people access Pali or Sanskrit directly. The Thai script can be used to transliterate Pali and Sanskrit. So technically, we kind of have a direct link, like in a complete ecosystem of doing translation or being part of this language. But for languages, as I said, for languages that are further beyond the Hindu Kush, there is a community that has been working on those languages, although with less people, but still very interesting. I'm showing you this cover page of Sappa Pajana Phasa Thai, which is a Thai, Latin, French, and English dictionary, a prolific work from 1854. It was put together by Jean-Baptiste Balcourt. He was I think if you do Thai history, he was known as the Sankarat Balcourt, a very good friend of King Rama IV, who I think he was mainly based in the Immaculate Conception Church in Samsen, close to St. Gabriel's College, those area. And as a Christian, the Roman Catholic priest, he was busy he knows Latin, of course. And as part of the mission, the French missionary that came to Thailand, one of his projects was to kind of spread the knowledge that is the religious knowledge in Christianity that is in the Latin language. And one of the tools that he created was this dictionary. We happen to have it at our library as well, and the manuscript is just here. So if you'd like to have a look at the actual volume from 1854, please come and have a look maybe at the end of the lecture. In this dictionary, very interesting, you have this Thai column, and then also the transliteration of how Thai is read using Latin script. So if you look at the entry for Chan or Prachan, there is this CHAN karaoke transliteration just there, and the Latin entry, Luna, and the French entry, Lune, and the English translation, Moon. And below Chan, there's this three entries for derivations of the term Jan, like Prajan, the moon itself, or the god of the moon, or Jantra Angkat, Jantra Khat, the eclipse of the moon, and Wanjan Monday. Also at our library is this manuscript of Universal History ประวัติศาสตร์สากล by หลวงวิจิตรวาทการ published in 1929. So this is one of the earliest, I think one of the earliest Thai books that actually contain Babylonian or terms that are kind of from the Babylonian culture. We have a manuscript here as well from our library. So if you look at this page 77, there's this name just there. It reads Nabuchodonosor, which is the 19th century pronunciation for Nebuchadnezzar II. You might, if you do opera, this is the name for Verdi's Nabucco. So in the original manuscripts, it's Nabuchodonosor, king of Babylon or something, and now we use the term Nabucco in the opera. But it's just very interesting to see how this book, which is a Thai book, is a product of like a 19th century Babylonian research in Europe, but written by a Thai person who was educated in Europe. Nebuchadnezzar II, of course, is credited for in the legend, of course, for being the builder of this Tower of Babel. Just 1 second. Hello. Okay. Let me just turn this off for a second. All right. And in a few pages in the book, we have also transliteration of Babylonian names of Babylonian gods. For example, here it's Sin Frosin, the the moon god, Kamak or Shamash, the sun god, Nergal here for Nergal, the god of war, Nebo here, Nabu, the god of the liberal arts, Marduk here, Marduk, the god of the he's like the great god of the Babylonian pantheon, like a major figure in it's like Indra. Ninip for Ninurta, another warrior god, and here Istar for Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, and the goddess of who is represented by the morning star, which is very interesting because here Luong Wichit says there is no Venus, but this is inaccurate. Like, the Venus is actually Ishtar, and then we have Ea here, wisdom god, and Asura, or oops, sorry, this is my fault. So say Ashur for he's like the god of the Assyrians. It's like a god that represents the land of Ashur, basically. Adad is actually is here Ramman, the god of weather and storm. Anyway, so in principle, it's very interesting to see from 1929 a transliteration of some Babylonian terms into Thai already very early on. More recently, there has been translations and attempts to translate many ancient Greek texts. For example, this one book, Homer's The Odyssey by Ajahn Suryashat Chaimongkol in 1984. So most of the ancient Greek texts were sort of, as far as I know, they're actually about 30 entries now, very interesting. Most of them from the philosophical circle, but some of them are actually literature, like this one, The Odyssey. This one is from, so the translator took it from the English translation by E.V. Rue in, the first publication was in 1916. More recently, this Homer's Iliad from ancient Greek, directly from ancient Greek, translated into blank verse by Vetat Potharamik in 2017. He was using this 1924 Loeb classic. So this is very relying on this institutional figure in ancient Greek and in the classics. So A.T. Murray to 1924 and Verity in 2012, Oxford World Classic. Very interesting. Go and have a look. This one though caught my attention because the translator San Salaya Shirin 1997 actually created not just the translation of Greek names in the Odyssey, but the author was also trying to find a way to make the translation of these names appeal to the Thai readers by applying Thai names or names that sounds Thai. But this is very debatable because as I'll read it to you, some of these names in Thai, they have this meaning that isn't really related to the original Greek name, but still, like the attempt is very interesting, and the idea that translators from one language to another, especially from ancient language to a living language, should create an environment that is suitable for the readers of the modern language is a very interesting idea. So Cassandra, this Trojan princess, is Kasama. Has nothing to do with Cassandra. Crete, the island Crete in the Mediterranean, is Kiti. Creon, King Creon, is Kirin. Very interesting. Clytemnestra, Queen Clytemnestra, is Katanet. Jason, the Argonaut, this hero who went on and took the golden fleece. Jason is Jesada. Telemachus, son of Odysseus, is Telamatu. And Zeus, the great god, is Sut. And Odysseus is Atisut. And the name of the translation is Atisut Pajonpai. Amazingly interesting. The adventure of Odyssey, the Odyssey. The adventure of Odysseus, basically. In the philosophical side, this one translation of Plato's Phaedrus and Ion, very interesting. The translators, Utong Ko Inta and Supamit Kema Lilakun, 2012, went through, 5 English translations of Plato's manuscripts, and also went on. I read their small introductory essays, and they said for Greek terms that they didn't understand. So apart from reading the ancient the English translation, they also read some of the key vocabularies from the Loeb Classics version, and for terms that they didn't understand, they actually went to a Greek-speaking friend, so like a native Greek speaker, to get the person to read out loud the actual term, and so that they could do the transliteration. And the latest project, very interesting. I've just completed this. I've just read this book last week by Ajahn Pasuri Liskun. Translation of the Mayan mythology, the mythology of the Quiche people, which is one of the native people of the Mayan civilization. From, if I remember correctly, she was using 3 main translation in Spanish and English, and this just got out yesterday. She was also asking a native speaker. This project is super interesting. As far as I know, so Ajahn Pasuri went into contact with the Guatemalan embassy in Thailand, and through them, they were able to get this native Quiche speakers to actually read out to her the Quiche terms and names that she needed to transliterate. Amazing book. Anyway, and more recently, 2019, we have, let's say, an introduction to Babylonian and Mesopotamian culture in Thai, published by Kun Nathapol Det Khajon, just right before COVID. So in general, just to set out the context, we apart from the more traditional Pali and Sanskrit translation tradition, there's this community who is really working hard on other ancient languages, particularly ancient Greek and some that is ancient Latin, and now we are also doing Babylonians right from this lecture onward. So what is Babylonian, or what is more generally Akkadian? So when we're talking about ancient Babylonian, we are talking about this area. Where is my pointer? This area, which is now the south of modern Iraq. Babylonia is usually combined in research, we usually use the term Akkadian as overarching umbrella term that combines the Babylonian dialect of this Akkadian language and the Assyrian dialect of this Akkadian language, forming this major language in ancient Mesopotamia, what is now known as Mesopotamia, or what is usually known as Mesopotamia. I'm just going to show you this modern map of the region. So essentially Mesopotamia, ancient Mesopotamia is now in modern Iraq. It's sort of, so Babylonia and Assyria is kind of like divided by Baghdad really. So Babylonia is everything south of Baghdad, and Assyria is towards what is now Mosul and Kurdistan. Just to talk a bit about the history of doing Babylonian archaeology or ancient Mesopotamian studies in general. So back in the 19th century, when Iraq was was part of the Ottoman Empire, and as Europe was expanding in their imperial regime, a lot of let's just say, well, this field started from biblical scholars and people who were trained in engineering and architecture, because that was what they needed at that time. Site documentation and replicating all the artifacts and inscriptions. So our forefathers, or my forefathers, were actually architects who were, academics who were trained in Hebrew studies or trained to draw and build buildings. Very interesting. And in 1857, this was the year that Akkadian cuneiform was declared deciphered. It was deciphered using the publication of this inscription, the BC2 inscription in modern Iran. It's in a way very similar to, if you know the story of how ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs were translated or deciphered, they were using this Rosetta Stone, right? This bilingual inscription, when 3 scripts. So Akkadian or Babylonian went through the same process. So this BC2 inscription, you have the same text written in Akkadian, the same text written in Elamite, and the same text written in Old Persian. But the fun part, though, is that this inscription was carved on this mountain. Very interesting. And the first person, I think it was called Rawlinson, actually went up this scaffolding and drew everything, risked his life for knowledge and academia. Back in the late 1940s, I think, and 10 years later, the script was declared officially revived. In the 1920s, this was when systematic studies of Babylonian or Akkadian or ancient Mesopotamian archaeology went into force. Let's just say we have popular figures like this lady. Anyone want to guess? Agatha Christie. Yes. So she actually went to Ur with her husband, this gentleman, who went to New College, Oxford. Max Marlowe went, so he's like a prolific archaeologist, and he got married with Agatha Christie. I think she was like a decade older than him, but the idea that this gentleman was doing archaeology was very appealing to Agatha, because she does crime novels, right? And technically we're doing the same thing, right? We're actually inspecting sources and evidence that identify what was happening. So Agatha went to a few expeditions, and her artifacts, things that she found, some of them are actually in Cambridge now, in our storage. And if you know one of her books, Murder in Mesopotamia, one of the Poros, it's not that famous in comparison to Murder in on the Orient Express and Death on the Nile. It's in the same series. So this detective Poro actually went to Ur, and this whole crime scene that was taking place in this temple or something in Sikkurat was actually inspired by this expedition in 1922, between 1922 and 1934. Anyway, so since then, when Assyriology or ancient Mesopotamian studies took off, academics were busy working to create tools such as this dictionary, which has just been recently completed. So it was completed in 2010. This is the Assyrian Dictionary of the Institute for the Study of Ancient Cultures, University of Chicago, formerly known as the Oriental Institute. This is a very, very prolific project. So the idea was that because we needed tools to find out the meanings of the Babylonian, or the Assyrian or the Akkadian vocabularies, right? What they did was this team of Assyriologists, they went out and read all the texts and identify every individual terms and put them into alphabetical entry. And it took them 4 decades to actually go from A to Z. And this is how we study dead languages. No, I think in Pali and Sanskrit we have a very similar approach to identifying the meanings of a term. We need to go to this one big, scripture dictionary that has the entry of every identified term. So yeah, so the idea is that for an entry, let's say palace, this dictionary would cite every text there is that has the term palace, and you can use that as reference to go and find out and to find the context in which this term is used. Very interesting, very useful. And since then, we also have other philological tools, such as the grammatical book, this one book, in German, this German dictionary of Akkadian, and this German anthology of Akkadian ideograms. But as you see, it's. But this is why we're talking today, right? We're talking about possibilities of perhaps using these tools that are actually in a modern language to create perhaps another tool that is in our language or in Thai, so that we can use it in parallel with these established tools. So yeah, what is Babylonian? What is Assyrian? What is Akkadian? So as I said, Babylonian, Assyrian are in a way a bit of a modern colloquial nickname for dialects of a language that is technically known as Akkadian. It is from this East Semitic branch, and by being Semitic, this means that Akkadian is related to major languages now, such as Arabian or Hebrew. Yes. So technically, if you know Hebrew or Arabic, approaching Babylonian from those languages is actually not difficult because of how the grammar is very similar. So this is a bit of a nerdy part, but I just want to give you this introduction. So how does Akkadian works? How does Akkadian create vocabularies? There's this one thing that's called the root system. The idea is that every term in Akkadian derives from a meaningful set of consonants. And you can derive nouns, you can derive verbs, you can derive adjectives by putting these consonants into vowel patterns. For example, parasu in English is to cut or to divide. If you put it in this pattern, aparas, it means I cut. So it's the first person derivative singular of parasu. Iprus, also with the root parasu, right, PRS, is third person petrate singular of parasu. He or she cuts. He or she cut. Or this one pattern, parisu, also from the root parasu. No? This is the roots that indicates the doer of this act. So instead of this is verb basically, right? This is more like the noun of the parasu verb. So the one who cuts or the one who commits the cutting action. How about this one? Nasaru, to guard. Can you identify the roots? Anyone? From tanasar. N and this set, right? In SR, exactly. This ta is the prefix for second person. So tanasa would mean something like you guard. Nisuru, also from nasaru, no? In SR, protection. It's the noun form of nasaru. Or nasiru, which is similar to pasiru. So the person who commits the act of guarding, that is the guard. So once you know this, you know Akkadian. And you know Arabic. So word order, very important in translation. Can you guess where this is from? I think you might have known it from school. So shumma avilum avilam ubirama nertam elishu itima. If a man accused another man and threw murder at him, something would happen. This is the first line from the first item of the Hammurabi law. I just want to use this example to illustrate the word order here. So ubirma is the verb to accuse, and it's at the end of the clause. Nertam elish idima is the verb of the second clause. It's at the end. So normally, if you look at Akkadian texts, you could kind of identify the end of a clause by looking at where the verbs are. Time, so tenses. Akkadian mainly has 3 tenses. So in this Hammurabi text, very interesting. So if you start Akkadian, the first thing that your teacher would throw at you is actually Hammurabi, because his grammar is complete and his vocabulary is just great. We kill each other, we throw poison at each other, and our hands are cut. Very interesting. Anyway, so ubir is abaru, the verb abaru in petrate, which is in the past. Iti is not to in petrate. Uktin, petrate usually petrate in Akkadian literally refers to a verb that is to an action that took place in the past. It's just something that took place in the past. Whereas perfect indicates the completeness of the action. So in a way, this is not the difference between petrate and perfect isn't much of the time difference, but more of like the completeness of the action and where it took place. And itak here is daku, to kill in passive derivative or in passive present. So in English translation it would mean he will be killed. So technically this basically says if you happens to be accusing a man or somebody of murder, then if you la uktishu, la is negation, if you cannot kanu is to prove that something is true, to identify that something is true. So if you cannot identify that what you said is true, Mupirashu is from the verb abaru as well, but in noun form. So the person who threw this accusation, Itak, will be killed instead. So, yeah. Be mindful of what you said about other people, or else you might be faced with a Hammurabi approach to persecution. Anyway, violence, also very interesting, and perhaps very, very identifiable if you're a Thai user. So in the same text, Shumma awi lum is long while. So in Akkadian, there's a distinction between a short while and a long while. Awi lum, awi lam, the same we is long. Ner tam, a long while. Eli shu, li is a long while. Manuscripts. So this is the fun part actually, because I like artifacts in general, and to be looking at the manuscript and everything. Ancient languages recording in cuneiform. So apart from Akkadian, there are other ancient languages that use cuneiform. So cuneiform is the name of the script, not the language. It's just the like Latin script, which is used to write French, English, Italian, German. They all use the same script, right? That is called the Latin script. Cuneiform is the same thing. You use cuneiform to write Sumerian, Akkadian, Hittite, Elamite, and Old Persian. But particularly in Akkadian, there are 3 ways of using cuneiform. The first way is to use cuneiform as syllables. We'll look at the examples later. The second way is to use them as ideograms or pictograms or sumerogram. And the third way is to use them as determinatives. What is syllabograms? So just to go back to Hammurabi again. So each sign represents 1 syllable of a word. So shumma, 2 syllables, 1 word, represented by these two signs. Awilum, awilum, awilam, 3 syllables, 3 signs. Upbi irma. This is how they find solution for consonant vowel consonant syllable that does not have a sign to represent, to kind of break the syllables into 2. But this is how cuneiforms are used to indicate syllables. Very similar to if you do Japanese katakana. Very interesting. Or use them as ideograms. So if you want to guess, Mushen, or in Akkadian, Isuru is what? Judging from the image. A duck? Close, it's a bird. How about this one? Ku number 6, or in Akkadian, Nunu. A fish, exactly. How about this one? Imeru. There. Horse? No. A deer? No. It's actually a donkey. And very interestingly, so a horse is actually anshe plus something that means foreign, or something that means mountain. So in a way, we can kind of theorize an etymology of the term horse and the actual existence of horse in Mesopotamia, and the fact that they might be foreign because it's written donkey, that is foreign. Anyway, and there's this one other way of using cuneiform signs in Akkadian, to use it as determinatives. If you know Mandarin Chinese, there's a very comparable system. This sign there, U number 2, in this context is used to indicate a plant or a herb. It's not pronounced, it's just there as an image. It's like a signpost that tells you, okay, once you hit this term, it's a plant. And this plant, very interesting, written asala number 2, or asalu, is a plant that if one eats this plant, one will have no sorrows. And some people who work in medical texts thought that this is actually marijuana. But we need more evidence. But it's interesting. So you consume this plant and you're not sad anymore. So there are only a few plants that help you do that. So anyway, manuscripts. So cuneiform exists in various forms of text, as you have seen. Rock inscriptions on decorative bricks, on clay material, that's this one cylinder, or in this manuscript, it's a small letter, or on stone inscriptions. So technically, if you work on cuneiform, it's either that you kind of focus on the typology of material, or on the typology of, as we'll see later, of a kind of text that might exist across different types of material. Okay, this is the fun part. How much time do we have? 10 minutes, okay. I did some drafty material for translation, and what I wanted to do is to try and read them to you and have you guess what it is, just so that we are engaged with the fact that the Babylonian or the Akkadian textual corpus is so rich and so much fun, in fact. So this one text, I'll read in Thai, I'll translate into English now. So the tamarisk tree says, เจ้ามันไร้ประโยชน์ and the interpalam in English is date palm, says, เจ้าสิไร้ประโยชน์ So tamarisk says, you're useless. The date palm also says, no, you're useless. Tamarisk says, it's me. I'm above you. And I'm the father of every institution พ่อทุกสถาบัน everything that ชาวนา everything ทุกอย่างที่ชาวนาใช้ everything that the farmer use เขาตัดมาจากกิ่งก้านของข้า he took it from my branches my body ร่างของข้า he turned it into a plow oh no พลั่ว what's the English term for พลั่วthis spade that one thing you use to dig Anyway, and the date palm wasn't happy. So he says, no, it's me. I'm above you. I'm the father of every institution. I'm the Potuk Sataban. Everything that the farmer used, so he repeats tamers, the whip, the ropes, everything is from me. But the tamers is still not happy. And he says, think, every utensils in the palace, it's from me จงคิดดูโภคภัณฑ์ทั้งหลายมาจากข้าล้วนมาจากข้า in the palace of the king ในตำหนักของราชา he eats from my table he drinks from my cup from my plate and the soldiers also eat from my ตะกร้า basket I am invincible and the dead palm also wasn't happy and he says he dropped the bomb and he says I'm the altar of seeing the moon god, and if I'm not standing there, the king he wouldn't perform this ritual libation. So I'm the most important. Anyone want to guess what this is from? Gilgamesh. We have Gilgamesh, but later. This is actually from a very a text, a corpus of text that is so much fun to read. It's called Disputation Poem here. And it's essentially a conversation, a debate, or more like a vulgar debate between two figures. In this case, the tamarisk and the date palm. And they compete in argument of whether, and they argue of whether or not, as to whether one is better than the other. And you can take very, very humorous terms or very philosophical terms sometimes. I wanted to show you this text because it gives you the idea that this Babylonian corpus, you have texts that are somewhat conversational, but it's sort of dictated by the fact that, so apart from what we call now the tamarisk and the palm, we also have I don't know the actual number, but a lot of other poems that assume this form as well. So it's essentially just people arguing against each other, and at the end of the story, they would go to an authoritative figure, sometimes the king, to have him or her judge who the greatest person in this conversation is. Unfortunately for the Tamaris and the palm, we don't have the ending, so the ending is missing. So we don't actually know who the greatest character is. Let's do two more. How about this one? So I'll read in Thai first. So ใครจะอยากไปแต่งงานกับท่าน Who wants to marry you? You ท่านคือบานประตูที่ไม่ได้กั้นทั้งลมร้อนลมเย็น You are this door leaf that does not block both the hot and the cold wind. ท่านคือยางมะตอยที่เลอะเปื้อนคนหาม You are this bitumen that leaks onto the person who bears that basket's hand. You are shoes that cuts into the wearer's feet. ท่านคือรองเท้าที่กัดเท้าของคนที่ใส่อยู่ Where do you think this is from? This is actually from Gilgamesh. Very interesting for an epic poem to have a very somewhat a humorous turn. But this is where. So if you know the story, Gilgamesh, this epic hero, right? Very masculine, very successful. One day, the goddess Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, saw him from heaven high above, and she was struck by his charm. So she came down and asked Gilgamesh immediately to marry her. But Gilgamesh, being very proud, very martial, says in her face that she's basically a person who isn't useful, and a person who at the end of this verse, Gilgamesh basically asks Ishtar, who is the person that you wed that lives? And the context is that from what we know in the literary corpus, most of the people who married Ishtar actually died before her, or just died miserably. So in a way, Gilgamesh was actually referring to what is actually perhaps a context that readers of Babylonian at that time would have known already. I wanted to cite you this example because in a way we have something that mimics speech, but with being a complete manuscript, this is the indication of the fact that the manuscript is incomplete. It is very difficult to make sense of these metaphorical languages. That is the metaphor that Gilgamesh is using to accuse Ishtar. From the translation, we know that. So Itutu, for example, is bitumen. So he was really calling Ishtar like a bitumen. Or this one in line 38, Nadu is with water skin. There's this determinative kush that indicates the fact that this material is made of leather. So he was basically calling Ishtar this water skin that isn't functioning well. So. In a literature. So before we end, let's just do this one other example, my favorite example, in fact. I'll read in Thai and then I'll translate into English. So it says, พระดำรัสของราชกุมารีถึงพระนางลิบารีชราช and the words of the royal princess to Princess Libari Sharat. Why are you not doing homeworks, reading and reciting the vocabularies? ทำไมหล่อนถึงไม่ไปเขียนหนังสือและท่องศัพท์ If you don't do it, ถ้าเธอไม่ทำเดี๋ยวคนเขาก็จะหาว่า if you don't do it, people will start accusing you and says นี่นะหรือคณิษฐาของเชรูอาเอเทราด Is this the sister of เชรูอาเอเทราด this great princess ทูลกระหม่อมองค์ใหญ่ daughter of Ashur-etel Ilani Mukini, this great king, king of Assyria, king of the world. You are, I think the original text is royal wife. You are the royal wife. หล่อนเป็นสะใภ้หลวง เป็นมเหสีของ Ashurbanipal, the wife of Ashurbanipal, succession successor of Esarhaddon, king of Syria. So what do you think this is from? Where do you think this is from? Any guess? This is actually a direct message. Simple as it is, it is a direct message from Princess Shewa, of course, to her sister-in-law, Princess Libari Sharat. And interestingly, Princess Shewa was just really asking why her sister-in-law is not doing homework. I wanted to show you this example because it gives us questions such as how should we translate this text in terms of, if we think of the fact that Thai has a separate language for royalty, Rajasap, right? What's the register of this text? On the one hand, it's conversational, but it's a conversation between or from a royal figure. And because of its extraordinary context, we don't have that much evidence of or personal letters that are exchanged, especially between female members of the royal family. What is the context that help us translate this text? If we look at, this is the fun part really, if you look at the terms that Princess Tera is using, Tashatiri, this is second person for to write, and it's not in a higher register or anything. It's just, he was just using a normal term that you would see in other Akkadian texts that is about writing. Or Takabbi, Kabu is to speak, so it's not a royal language. Princess was just using a normal language with her sister-in-law. But even being this very, even though this is a very small, it's actually this palms are smaller than palm size. It's now in the British Museum. You can all go and see it. It's this very small, interesting line text, WhatsApp text, whatever you call it. Princess Tera was actually calling her father using the complete title. I find this very interesting because why would you, in what kind of state of mind would you write a personal text message asking your sister-in-law to do homework by citing your father's full title? Is she angry? Is she really unhappy that this younger sister of her is making her lose face by not doing homework, and such that she has to talk to her using this kind of semi-formal, colloquial but semi-formal language, and by citing her father's entire title and her brother entire title as well. So what I wanted to well, okay, it's 8. What I wanted to tell you, though, in general, is that the Babylonian or the Akkadian textual corpus is there is a lot to it, and there are the corpus is diverse, and the text is. On the one hand, it's a lot of fun to read all this, right? But because of how diverse it is, it gives us a lot of questions about how we can translate this using modern tools such as English, French, and German, but to convey perhaps the worldviews of the users of these languages, the users of the Akkadian language into Thai. There are aspects that in a way we might not think about when we do translations between English and Thai, but I think that's the fun part of learning an ancient language. It makes us think out of the box, and it makes us strive. So in order to convey the meaning and what's actually in some people's idea, we go back to I don't know, Agatha Christie is being interested in archaeology. You know, we all wanted to know how people in the past might have thought about certain things. And now we are trying to form tools that help us get closer to those objectives. Thank you. Questions? There are more texts, though, if you want to do some translation. We have a microphone. Oh, okay.
I think you mentioned Akkadian language so many times. But politically, there was the old Babylonia.
Yes.
And Hammurabi belongs to that part. And Nebuchadnezzar belongs to the Neo-Babylonia.
Yes.
Right? And then, I don't know, this Epic of Gilgamesh, does it belong? And then the Assyria, in between these two Babylonian periods, the Assyrians became very strong. Nineveh was the center. And the British archaeologists discovered Nineveh, which was just varied throughout all the periods. Now, Gilgamesh is around when? The Epic of Gilgamesh belongs to which part of this old Assyria, old Babylonia, Assyria, and Neo-Babylonia? And then we all know about this Cyrus cylinder, which belongs to Persia, actually. So that's what I wondered. I wondered, well, Gilgamesh and which belongs to which part? So, and yes, and the opera Nobuko, the most famous piece is the Hebrew chorus. Yes, the chorus. Yes, the slaves. Yes. You see. Thank you.
So Old Babylonian or Old B or Ham. This is 1800 BC. Neo B or Nebu. This is something like 600 BC. Neo-Assyrian Empire. This is like Mesopotamian history. Neo-Assyrian Empire. This is something like let's just say 1,000 to right before Nebuchadnezzar. And Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is like, I would say in a way it's kind of like Ramayana or maybe it's not even accurate. What I'm trying to say is that Gilgamesh as we know it in more or less complete form is the one that came from sometime like 700 BC, 7 to 600 BC. That was when it was this king, actually, the king that was mentioned in this letter. It's the brother of Princess Cherai. So he commissioned the compilation of Gilgamesh and form what is now known as this version, the Epic of Gilgamesh. This one, the Babylonian Epic of Gilgamesh. So this one was the later compilation of the story that exists in many forms before that. So we have like old Babylonian manuscripts of Gilgamesh. We have Sumerian, some bits in Sumerian as well, but it's not complete. So wait, let's go back to your question. So when we talk about Gilgamesh, if you want to be specific, then you say Epic of Gilgamesh, Neo-Assyrian, then you probably be referring to this complete version. But Gilgamesh in general is just a figure that exists as an epic hero.
Well, if I may, I would like to ask you how you associate the Noah's period with Epic of Gilgamesh.
Well, what's interesting about the Epic of Gilgamesh is that it makes reference to another mythology that is the creation myth. In the actual name, though, is the Epic of Atrahasis. That is where the flood story was told. But Gilgamesh is such a fun story. Anyway, what happens in Gilgamesh is that in the first half, he met this other hero, Humbaba, teamed up with Humbaba, went and killed this monster in Lebanon, got back, got Ishtar angry because apparently Gilgamesh didn't want to marry Ishtar, so she sends this. She made Humbaba die, and that was like the point when Buddha saw like sickness and illness and death. You know, it gave him this inspiration and somewhat like an enlightening mindset. And so, because he saw Humbaba died in front of him, he made this journey to the edge of the world to find this figure called Utnapishti, who in Atrahasis is Atrahasis. The idea was that Gilgamesh went to Atrahasis or Utnapishti because he didn't want to die. He saw Humbaba die in front of his face. He didn't want to die, so he went to this person, this figure, who did not die because and this is where Gilgamesh made reference to the Epic of Atrahasis. So Gilgamesh was asking Atrahasis how did he not die, basically, and because Atrahasis knows that there is no way you can escape death, but Gilgamesh was too proud to actually accept the fact that he will die one day. When Atrahasis started telling the story about the flood and told Gilgamesh how he himself achieved this immortal status, which is extraordinary. And so I wouldn't personally compare Gilgamesh to the well, not just the Noah story, but everything that's in the Old Testament directly, simply because Gilgamesh itself is making reference to another Babylonian epic that is actually closer and more directly associated with the myth of the flood. Yeah. Thank you.
I have a very simple question, not like
yes.
that. The Thai translation, was it done by you?
Yes, this is just me having fun.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
But the second question is, did you do it from the English that's already in existence, or did you do it from the original?
I started from the original, but I was using. But this is a very good question. So I started Babylonian by going to an English university, and at that point we only have English, German, or French philological tools to help us attain understanding in Babylonian. So there was no way for me to not do it using English or German or French, simply because the tools are just in those languages. But that was why I was trying to experiment with terms that are closer to Thai. So if you go back to this disputation point between the tamarisk and the palm, let me just quickly show you this again. So when I said "พ่อทุกสถาบัน," the Akkadian itself is actually Abu Umani Kalama, which literally translates to the father of every craftsman specialist. So technically, they're actually in a way kind of comparable. I didn't realize that. Before looking at the original Akkadian, I didn't realize that in a way there is a similarity. I mean, there is a way to kind of construct a similar connotation. There is this other text we didn't have a chance to look, but so there is this one king who was accusing his brother of lying, and he was using the term. Where is it? The term. There. Dipishachari. Dippu, which is words, คำพูด Cha is preposition of, and Charu is win. So he would this brother of the king who was actually creating fake news about him. This king was actually, so he sent a letter to a governing body who is under his brother and says, "Don't listen to my brother. He is saying Dippi Shari, words of the wind." And so in Thai there's this term called Gohok Poklom, or just Poklom, is to lie with the wind coming from you, or คำพูดสามหาว words of the vulgar. In a way, they maybe not, Thank you.
I have two questions.
Yes.
The first one goes back to พ่อทุกสถาบัน
Yep.
Do you feel that พ่อของทุกแขนงศาสตร์ or พ่อของทุกศาสตร์วิชา would suit as well in that context? Because สถาบัน seems like a modern view of like an institutionalized.
I was just it's like a literal not the literal translation, but more like a free translation using terms that we have in the Thai corpus. But you're right. I mean, it'd be more accurate if we use, so when Ummanu would mean something like I'm also in Thai. There's like Ban Mo, like a community of people who do pottery. Yeah.
It's still very fun though, so I like it a lot. the one you came up with.
It's a fun text, yes.
A second question is, I understand that ancient, not ancient, but pseudo-archaeologists from the West excavated and seek Babylonian, Akkadian, Assyrian because of the biblical connection. Because they found in the Bible these things that they learn in high school or whenever, and they dig it up and they confirm the Bible. For us East Asian, we don't have that kind of connection.
Yeah.
What do you think we can pursue from the study of this particular group of civilization or language?
I mean, I got personally interested in this language simply because it's interesting. But whether or not, I mean, it's a difficult thing. I mean, I don't know. This is a question that I mean, I'm trying to answer myself as well when I need to apply for fundings, But in a way, in a way, there is a merit in being interested in something that's completely disconnected from you, right? And what I always say is, though, when we as a community meet in a way, as a dead language, there is less constrictions to your imagination. So in a way, unless you know Arabic, but still Arabic is a language that is quite distant in time from Akkadian. You might approach Akkadian from Arabic using Arabic grammar or using. I mean, I'm trying to approach Babylonian poetry from Arabic poetry, but apart from that, I mean, it's your imagination. It's just you working with your set of evidence and make arguments about what things might have been, and in a way, regardless of your background. Or, I mean, this is very personal, but one of my supervisors in the UK, I got to him one day asking if it is possible to do comparative literature, Akkadian and Sanskrit or Pali, and he says yes, why not? Because like the ancient, like the culture of South Asia now, which is polytheistic, Mesopotamia was polytheistic, and I mean in a way Thailand is polytheistic, but Europe isn't that polytheistic. So my supervisor is like a British person. He was saying, in a way, the only reason why no Europeans or very few Europeans have done South Asian and Mesopotamian comparative study is because they don't feel like they're related to South Asia. But that does not mean that, it shouldn't be done. Simply because there is a way you could make sense of ancient culture that is not practiced now. I mean, using a culture that is well alive, so, yeah.
Thank you so much. I think
Thank you.
It's very humanizing to learn about the past and to see that text scolding, her sister about doing homework.
This is very true. This is one of the reasons why I keep reading Babylonian, because in a way, and I keep saying this to friends as well, like learning ancient cultures or just learning literature in general, it gives you this empathy. As all of a sudden you realize that you understand, or you think you understand, like this princess who is struggling with vocabulary in 710 BC and being scolded by her much higher status royal sister. Yeah, that's the fun part. ครับผม
Just one short question. What about approaching Babylonian from Babylonian compilation? I mean, of dictionary translating Babylonian into explaining Babylonian words in Babylonian.
Explaining this dictionary, if I remember correctly, it does. Let's just have a look. It does have, in a way, it is that. Oh, just 1 second. I'll just put up an example. So this Chicago Assyrian dictionary is actually telling you to learn Babylonian from Babylonian, because what it does is, let's see. Because what it does, so this one, Kubaru, Kubaru, which translates to English, duplicate, copy, or answer. What this dictionary does is that it takes you to, in theory, every Kubaru that exists in the known Babylonian corpus. So, I mean, if you just want like a quick definition, then there is the English definition for you there. But if you want to know exactly how Kubaru was used, then this dictionary takes you to every instant there is that has been found the term Kubaru, and that is in some way. I mean, in a way, it's still you're still going to use a translation to approach all those examples, but still, this ecosystem, if I would say, helps you, in a way, it helps you form an idea about a term, and as we do more excavations, as more inscriptions are read in, like we have, I don't know, like 50,000 individual fragments of cuneiform texts hidden in like London, Paris, New York, and Berlin. As more texts are published and read, more terms and more usage of some terms that we already know would add to the knowledge of the meaning of that term. So technically, this is learning Babylonian, using Babylonian. But if you're talking about learning Babylonian the way the Babylonians learned Babylonian, then there is this specific corpus that is called the school text, and it's essentially a set of it's like school books. So it literally just takes school children through readings, individual syllables and terms. And at one point, you'll start reading Sumerian as well. So we have manuscripts of Sumerian Akkadian dictionary from ancient Babylonia as well. So, and that's how we actually study Sumerian. So as a Thai person, I'm actually learning Sumerian from English, German, and Akkadian. Because by the time that let's just say that Sumerian sort of died out early on in the history of writing, and many of the Sumerian, especially the larger Sumerian epics, things like that, they are all from native users of Babylonian. So technically, it's already a secondary text, in a way. But yeah, that's the fun part about Sumerian. You're actually learning a dead language from a dead language, and through a modern language. If you don't use, if you're not a native users of English, French, German, then yeah.
Thank you for a very informative and interesting presentation. I have just one question. In Babylonian or Assyrian, is there some consonant or vowel sound that not have no match in Thai?
Yeah.
In Thai, and in your opinion, how to transfer or transliterate this sound to Thai alphabet?
Vowels, well, luckily, vowels in Akkadian are very much like Arabic. A, E, E, and O or U. But we tend to use U. But if you know modern Arabic, like in Egypt, if it's an U vowel, they tend to use O. This O sound is in Semitic is sort of a weak sound. So in different dialects, it's kind of transferable. Anyway, what I wanted to say is that vowel sounds in Babylonian, as far as we know, is very simple. It's an a or an a sound, so it's like a. But what's a bit complicated though is the consonant sound. There's this T, we use T with a dot and S with a dot sound, which is, I don't know the linguist term, but it comes from like somewhere there. There's a ta sound, which does not actually exist in Thai. But I haven't actually experimented in this though, but technically, I think the Royal Institute, Rajabanditiya Sahan, has a Thai Arabic consonant transliteration. And in theory, we can also, so if it's possible to compare this sound with an Arabic sound, and I think it is possible to compare this with an Arabic sound, then there's a rubric that helps us transliterate this sound into a Thai consonant. But this is very theoretical, but if you want to go into details, we're talking about 3,000 years of life. Like this, Akkadian is 3,000 years in its lifetime, and it spreads all over. The users of this language spreads all over, all the way to Egypt. Actually, there are Egyptian users of Akkadian, so we don't know if the same sound is pronounced the same way in its entirety, in its entire history. But this is why we need more ancient linguists. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
ขอบคุณครับ
Hello. Two questions.
ครับผม
The first one is I appreciate your choice or your judgment on when you translate. I mean, yeah, you take the freedom. Like, okay, I will translate it like to contextualize it.
Capture the attention. Yeah.
To our 2023 languages, right? พอทุกสถาบัน and whatever. But then I also appreciate that, because you try to translate something that happened to like in 600 BC, that is understandable for Thai. But then when you translate things, I mean, in biblical translation in Thai, we will see like, okay, formal translation, right, word for word, thought for thought, or dynamic translation, and paraphrase. When you translate those texts, whatever it will be like a royal correspondence or law, where's your middle ground, or like the way when you, okay, I will do it, contextualize it, or we'll go back to like the 600 BC context. I
think it depends on on the text, well, not on the text I'm working with, but on the translation I'm working with. And I think we see many examples in the previous translation, in the translations that have been done for ancient Greek and Latin. And in the classical studies, this is a very big question in, as far as I know, in the study of the classics, in the study of ancient Greek and Latin now as well, because there is a, at one point you need to make a judgment, right? If you want your translation to be, in a way, to be appealing to the mass readers, then in that case you might want to create a volume of translation that in a way that is more liberal in terms of how you follow the, well, not just the use of the vocabulary, right, but the structure of the sentence and the text as well. And for those translation, you're targeting new readers, you're targeting new audiences, and you're targeting people who you might think will become more interested. And that sits kind of on the opposite spectrum of the other kind of translation, that is the critical translation. This kind of translation tends to favor something that I wouldn't use the term accurate, but it at least it create tools like footnotes and notes, create essays. It comes with essays, or it comes with certain guidelines that helps you critically understand what's in front of you. But this appeals more to people in academia, or people who want to take these languages as a professional in a professional career. So I mean, when I learned Babylonian, as a class we were exposed to both kinds of translation. We had debates all the time about which one is better. But one thing that you need to keep in mind, though, and which is very important, and this brings me back to 2015. At the end of this debate, we all need to accept, especially if you do Akkadian or Sumerian, whether you favor a translation that is more liberal, or whether you favor the translation that is more critical, you need to become aware of the fact that there can be new manuscripts of your text all the time. Like tomorrow somebody might pull this secret drawer in the British Museum and present to you this new tablet of Gilgamesh, and there you are. You need to translate again the whole thing. So liberal or critical, we're working on the same issue essentially. Yeah.
All right. And then the second question is your choice of transliteration. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you transliterate those Akkadian names or like proper noun or whatever, will you, because I can see that, like for example the word Babylon, right, we don't translate as Babylon like the way English people see
exactly
it, right? And then for example the word sin, I'm not sure, but in the Old Testament the wilderness of sin is translated ถิ่นกันดารศิล with the Jatawa sound, right? I think and then I'm when you say I appear that okay, probably Akkadian has a tone intonation. I'm not sure, but then at least long and short vowels. And then when you come to transliterate it, will you faithfully go back to the original, or will you by times say, okay, I will choose to use the modern term because it's more understandable for contemporary people and whatever?
I think this depends on where you are in post-colonial studies. And it is post-colonial because, well, it is a colonial research. So for example, Nebuchadnezzar, this is not Akkadian, but it's a popular name of this king. But it's popularized because it came from, if I remember correctly, like a Hebrew transliteration or a Greek transliteration. But through that, people in Europe started to adopt this name, and it became popularized. And so now, as people who approach Akkadian language through English, German, and French, I mean, it's a bit of I don't know. I've actually made up my mind about this as well. Are we supposed to use terms? And this is in not just. I'm not speaking as a Thai person working on Akkadian, but like in Babylonian studies now, there is a debate as well whether or not we should now switch to a term that is more accurately correct in that regard. So Nebuchadnezzar is actually Nabukuduriusur. Doesn't make sense in our everyday life. Well, okay, Nebuchadnezzar makes sense, but what's the English term for that? Who has the final say? I don't know. This is what we're still trying to figure out. Yeah.
So, Wisnu, you're not going to ask any questions now. You can ask him afterwards. Okay, I think it's getting a bit late. And there's so much interesting what you have given us. So I want to thank you very much on behalf of the Siam Society, and I think you're about to receive a little gift, which is coming. And I'm so glad that you took up this interest in the studies, because I think some people in the audience knew about the subject, but a lot of us, it's very refreshing, isn't it? Thank you very much.